Welcome to episode 2 of the Sports Circuit podcast. We have a lot to get to today. I'm Evan, your main host.
I'm Miles, your mainer host.
Shut up. Okay, let's first topic today. This past week of college football, it was week 9, I believe.
Eight, eight,
Yes,
eight.
it was week 8. And a lot of crazy things happened, so let's get to it.
Let's start out in Austin, Texas. College game day was there. First thing we learned, first thing I learned, was that if you throw trash on the fields, SEC officials will change the call.
Yeah, that was terrible if I'm being honest. Like I predicted Texas to win the game. I think most people did. I was surprised, but that call was not great. I mean, like the reverse was not great.
Well, neither was the call.
Yeah, neither
Second
were
half are mad
great.
about.
Yeah, both were not good.
But welcome to the world of SEC officiating.
Welcome to the SEC. Me as a Kansas fan.
SEC officiating has been known to be atrocious, even worse than half of the entire ACC as a whole, um, and also worse than the University of Kansas fans and filling up a football stadium.
They're playing in an NFL stadium. That's like, what was it, like 50, 60 miles away from the actual campus. Now let's get back.
Anyway,
Let's get back to the Texas game. So, Miles, what's your main takeaway from this game?
Georgia is a national title contender. I don't care what anyone else says. Yes, they've struggled with Mississippi State.
And Kentucky.
They struggled with Kentucky. They lost to Alabama. Georgia fans, please keep in mind before trash talking Alabama that they beat you 3 weeks ago. But um, listen, Georgia looked good, got out to an early lead, almost blew it, but they won.
Right. Like, I mean,
Right.
Georgia. Like, who's next on their schedule? Next is Florida. I think for me, Georgia still has to prove a little bit more. A win
Yeah,
with Florida this weekend totally solidifies them.
so they're actually going to buy this weekend, and then
Oh, right.
Florida is no pushover. I
Yeah.
think Billy Napier is going to have that team prepared, but Florida isn't winning that game. Everyone knows that.
Yeah, but like
But I
if
think
Georgia struggles in this game, then they
well,
still have a lot to
Florida
prove.
Florida's going to is going to give Georgia a run for their money. Yeah.
I expect Georgia by at least 2 touchdowns.
Georgia by 2 touchdowns, but I think don't be surprised if it's 10-7 Florida early in the second quarter.
Right. Like, I mean, Florida, I think they're pretty. I don't know if they're overrated or underrated. Like, the people who have been talking about them are overrating them, but barely anyone's talking about them.
Georgia or Florida?
Florida.
I mean, listen, like Florida just beat the brakes off of Kentucky, right?
Right.
Should have beaten Tennessee. Had about 45,000 chances to win
No, I
that
don't
game.
know. They should not have beaten
What do you
Tennessee. Tennessee was
think?
14-point favorites.
That's not how should have beaten the team works. Florida outgained them. Florida had about 25 chances to win that game. Florida shot themselves. Florida lost that game. Tennessee didn't win that game. And
Tennessee won the game. Statistically, they won the
Tennessee,
game.
yes, score they won the game.
Yes.
Statistically, Florida outgained them. Florida shot themselves in them, but multiple times in that football game. Too many men on the field before the half.
Yeah, but you could also
Fumbling on
say
the
that
one
about
yard
multiple
line.
other games this year.
And
That
then,
a
of course,
team
the
just that
Miami, like, that was terrible.
it was.
Um, but listen, like, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, 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 Flor with DJ Lagway at quarterback, I think that team could be pretty good, but just the second half of their schedule is so tough.
Right.
Um, with Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, it'll be Florida State. Those
Something's
people
wrong
are
with
going to
them.
want Billy Napier out of there.
Okay, but let's get back to Georgia. Like what? So you think after the win against Texas that they are up there for a national championship with you?
Did you see Kirby Smart's eyes by any
Yeah.
chance? He looked like a madman.
I saw something on Instagram today that says that's the face he makes when he gets the call from the Athens PD.
But
No,
yeah,
but okay.
I think like
Kirby's face does not say
Kirk,
anything to me. Georgia still has something to prove. I know they're 6-1 and they just beat number one Texas, but allowing 31 to Mississippi State, getting 13 points against Kentucky. It doesn't look
I'm sorry.
great for. It looks good for them right now. It doesn't look great.
What is what else do they have to do to you? You
Well,
lose a
yes,
close, hard fought game in Tuscaloosa. You have two top 10 wins, which is more than anybody else has in the country. You just walk into Austin and dog walk Texas for an entire half of
I'm not
football.
saying
What
Georgia's
else do
not
you have to
good.
do?
I'm not saying Georgia's not
What
good. I'm saying if they win this next game by more than a possession, they've proved everything they need to me. But like I think
I
you can't
the
just
one
outweigh. Like, I know it was number one Texas,
on
but
the road
on the
and you
road
won by two
still.
scores.
But I think can't just you can't just take away all their struggles this season with a win, even if it did weigh that much. But one,
Listen, I think go ahead.
but a win this or next weekend, I guess, um, with Florida by more than a possession, that does everything it needs for me.
Listen, the one concern I have for that team is quarterback. I called it the season before the season. My dad said it. Carson Beck is overrated, no
He is
matter how
very
you look at
overrated.
it.
How many? He threw two picks in the first quarter.
Two picks.
Almost
He's not
three.
been great.
Almost three.
Wait, he did throw three. He did throw
No,
three
did he throw three?
because that one ended up getting reversed
No,
in the third
I was talking
quarter.
about first quarter. First
Two in
quarter.
the first quarter, three in the entire game
Yeah, you can't.
against against top five teams this year. He threw 6 interceptions.
Yeah, in the last couple of games, he's thrown a lot of picks.
So I think Carson Beck is a little overrated. And I know Georgia fans don't like hearing bad opinions about their team because they're a
They,
little sensitive, but
I know.
it's true. It's true. I
Yeah,
want to talk about another quarterback that I think got a little bit too much hype. The guy on the other sideline, Quinn Ewers.
he. I think Texas would have won if they played Arch Manning like the Quinn Ewers
Listen,
minutes.
Ewers had good games against bad teams,
That's true,
right?
and
And yes, he looked good, but go out there
he
against.
looked better in the second half.
He did look better in the second
But you
half.
can't take an entire when you're
Yeah.
going to the college football playoffs. You can't take an entire half to get used to a team.
You can do that against UL Monroe because you're going to win by 60,
But you can't do that
but
against Georgia
you can't do that against Georgia. You can't do that against Ohio State. You can't do that against Tennessee or Miami or anyone just because
or any team that's not
you're,
terrible. You just can't do that.
yeah.
So
So
what does this loss say about Texas? We
I
talked about what the
think,
win means for Georgia, but not what the loss means for Texas.
I think you have to look in the mirror and say, did
Lock
we
in.
get too big? Did we get too big for our britches? Like, you come in here, right? Quinn Ewers is playing great. You go on the road, you annihilate Michigan. You turned out not to be that great. You know, Quinn Ewers gets hurt. Arch Manning sort of has great games against bad opponents. You crushed Oklahoma, um, who again turned out not to be that great, and yet you had a slow start. That game,
Yeah, and who fired their
you
offensive
know,
coordinator?
Texas, we talked about Ohio State and them sort of struggling after playing a weaker schedule. But I think Ohio State's best win is better than Texas's best win, and Ohio State in their loss looked much better than Texas in their loss. So, Texas, I think, is beat up on a ton of mediocre to bad teams, and Mississippi State, they beat them. They beat Oklahoma. Did they beat Auburn? Like, yeah, it's great. But those teams are on the same level if you were playing, like, you know, I guess Iowa State's pretty good. But, like, if you were playing those kind of teams in the Big 12, we would be saying the same thing, you know.
Yeah, I want to like bring up something or kind of add on to something that you said and something that I said last week. I think after this week, I'm not putting these as my these are definitely not my top two in the country, but right now I'm putting Ohio State and Texas like in a tier of their own because they're both what 6-1 and
We're 5-1, got two buys.
okay, but apart from the one that they lost, that both of them have lost, they didn't really they didn't struggle against any other team. And like that is true that they didn't play amazing teams, but like at the time Michigan was the number what was like they were top 15 in the country. Oklahoma was still
They were top 10 because that was week two. So,
yeah, and Oklahoma was still ranked and they like talk about getting dog walked 34-3. And Ohio State again, both they also only lost one game. They've looked great, and like even they Ohio State's looked great in all their games, and Texas in the second half looked pretty good. And the reason I'm
yeah,
putting them in a
and
tier of their own is because apart from their one loss, they haven't really struggled at all. Meanwhile, like teams like Georgia, they have their one loss, but they've also struggled in other games.
yeah, that's what I was talking about. Like, you talked about a Georgia struggle with Mississippi State, Alabama struggle with USF,
And with Vanderbilt.
and Tennessee. But
Okay, but Tennessee's an actual good team though.
yeah, so is Vanderbilt. No, Vanderbilt disrespect on this
They're top
podcast. We'll
25 in the
cover it.
country now.
Can Michigan say that? No, they cannot. So, but Georgia struggled with Mississippi State and Kentucky. That's what sets them apart. It's just I've always said this with Ryan Day. I complain about Ryan Day because he can't win the big games, can't beat Michigan. What the one thing I like about Ryan Day better than when we had Urban Meyer? Urban Meyer won his championship, right? But he had one game a year. And he was at Florida when he was at Ohio State. That he would lose to a team he had no business losing to. Ryan Day hasn't lost to an unranked team, has not been in a one possession game with an unranked team.
Yeah, like
So
you just have to
he
put
knows
them in
how
a
to.
tier of their own. Like, I mean, yes, Ohio State did lose to Oregon. Yes, Texas did lose to Georgia, but they're still contenders. They're both still top five in
Yeah.
the country. Like, I was
Yes.
talking to my dad while watching the game, and I said, like, when, like, I think even if Georgia beats Texas and they fall out of number one, they're both still gonna. I think they're both going to the college football playoffs. One of, I think,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if Ohio State wins out and wins the Big Ten, you would assume you have the win over Penn State at that point.
I mean,
You
like even
have the win. Wait. Let me finish. Let me finish. You have the win over Indiana. You finally slayed the Dragon of Michigan. And in the Big Ten championship, you would avenge your loss to Oregon, right? So the
right.
one team that beat you, you went out and beat them in the bigger game, your conference championship.
Right, and like even if Ohio State wins out and loses the conference championship, they're still going to the playoffs. Like they
Yeah,
just don't get a first round
I
bye.
yeah I think we're the number one seed if yeah if
That's true.
yeah
I
I
think they
think
are.
I
I think
think we're the number one seed because we've looked objectively better than Georgia so far. Georgia has the better win.
no, you said something like this last week. I said Texas is the number one team in the country. You said I could argue for Oregon because they have the better win.
I said
Ohio.
Georgia
No, this is what you
has a
said.
better win than we do, and that's objectively true. That's like you're like, are you comparing Iowa to Texas? No,
No, that's not what I
like
said. I'm comparing what you said
you.
last week to this week, and I was gonna make a comment. That's what you said last week.
That's not what I said last week though. I
Yes, it
said
is.
Georgia. What I just said is Georgia has a better win than Ohio State, but
And they
Ohio State
do.
is objectively better
I'm literally
than
just saying what you
Georgia.
said a week and a half ago.
What did I say?
During our first episode, you said I was saying how Texas is the number one team in the country. You said you could argue for Oregon because they have the better win. That's what you said a week and a half ago. I'm comparing what you
Yeah,
said then to now. And I think for at least for right now, it doesn't matter who has the better win. It's just all about who's been the best so far. And there's a comment I want to make on that. The best team so far. I think yes, Oregon deserves the number one spot, and yes, they are the number one team in the country, but nobody looks at college football right now and says Oregon is the best team.
I do because right now I certainly do because looking at it in the grand scheme of things, Oregon undefeated, Georgia one loss, Texas one loss, Ohio State one loss. Georgia or does Georgia has a win, but like against Texas, but right now at 8:29 p.m. on Monday, October 21st, the Oregon win over Ohio State is you can't even deny the better win because Ohio State is ranked higher than Texas is right now. So like I think
That is not the
if
better win.
Ohio State is ranked higher than Texas.
It doesn't matter. Okay, let me say something. So you're right now you're saying that Oregon has the better win than Georgia. Is that correct?
Yes, and they're also undefeated.
It's not the better win for one reason.
That's
Oregon,
literally how it works.
Oregon.
That's literally
I'm
how the
not talking.
college football committee looks at it.
I'm not talking about
Dude,
rankings.
I've been watching this sport for 11 years.
Can I say so? Like, let me say something real quick.
What are you talking about then?
I'm not talking about rankings right now. I'm talking about just better win overall. The reason I think Georgia has the better win right now
Go
is because
ahead.
at the time Texas was the number one team. They played at Texas. Oregon played at home. And you said this last week
Now,
too. If Ohio State was at home, they would
the
have won, which they
worst.
would have.
Go ahead. Now, the worst metric in college football. Oh God, my face. Oh my God. Unfreeze. There we go. But I
Sniped.
talk about this with my brother all the time. It's what you are ranked right now. Like Texas fans cannot say they beat number 8 Michigan. Texas fans can say that they beat unranked Michigan because Texas isn't ranked or Michigan isn't ranked number 8 anymore. So I look at it. I've been watching this sport for 11 years. I know exactly how the playoff committee looks at it. They look at resume over how you look. If you have the same record as the team, but your resume is 10 times better, you're going to be ranked. That's how they did it last year. Georgia
Yeah.
looked better than Ohio State did when the first college football playoff rankings came out. But they ranked Ohio State number 1 because we had 2 top 10 wins and Georgia hadn't beaten a ranked team yet. So
That's
resume
not what I was
trumps
saying.
how you look on the field if both teams are even. That's literally what you were saying.
No, I'm saying I'm talking about game like one game to another game comparison. What's the
You were
better?
arguing me. That's what I was talking about, and you were arguing with me.
Okay, Because you said that Oregon had the better win, and I disagreed with you.
Objectively, Oregon had because
The
they
the
do
the only thing I'm saying is
because of the because no Evan because of how the college football playoff committee looks at better wins. The Oregon win over Ohio State is a better win than the Georgia over Texas. That's how the college football playoff defines it, not me.
yeah, that's no. Okay, I'm not comparing resumes or just other games in general. One game to one game comparison. I think you look at just different metrics of the game. Who is at home? Like, you look at that kind of stuff, and I think the Georgia at Texas win is better than the Oregon over Ohio State game.
Now I see your argument, but if we're going based on how it is defined, how it is defined in the college football playoff by the college football playoff committee, the Oregon win is better than the Georgia win. That's how I'm not making this up. I'm not
I
saying
don't think you
because I'm
are.
an Ohio State fan. No, because geez, another NBA extension. What's new? But
Who was it?
Aaron Gordon. I think what was that?
How much did
Aaron
they?
Gordon, 4 year, $133 million.
That's too much.
But
We'll get to that later in the NBA preview.
I love how we've turned this into like a first take where we're just arguing back and forth
I know.
with each other.
Okay, because we're arguing the same point from two different points of view. That's the problem. You're saying it from the
I'm
college football playoff
arguing
community. I'm saying by what I think was the better win. And I can think what I want. You can think what you want. You're
Evan.
taking what it
Evan,
defines by.
I'm not saying what I think. I'm saying of how it is defined by the people who have higher ranks than two teenagers doing a podcast. I'm
I'm
saying
not
how it is
Miles.
defined by the people who are paid to watch the game.
Miles, again, like
What
you're
is so hard to understand about that?
no. I agree with what you're saying about how the college football committee does this, but I don't see no one on the college football playoff committee here on this podcast. This is us two
Well,
agreeing with our
I
takes,
guarantee you, if we had the college football playoff commissioner on this podcast, he
which
would
we
agree with
don't.
me.
We don't.
I I can pull some from.
You you ask a bunch of if you ask a bunch of college football fans what they think is the better game, they think that this Georgia win was a better win than the Oregon win.
Well, I'm sorry that I'm trusting people whose job it is to do this over a bunch of people on Instagram. I'm
Miles,
sorry.
they watch the
I'm
game to
sorry.
get paid. I watch it for free. That's
They're getting paid millions of dollars to do it. I'm going to trust them a little bit more.
whoa. All I'm saying is, I think you're right about how they define it, but like they also look at the rest of their schedule and the rest of their resume, like you said. I'm just saying, like, you compare, I said this like 3 times now. You compare one game to one other game, then there's a few things you can look at that can clearly define for one person what's the better game.
And yes, I understand. Georgia was on the road. Yes, that could play into it. But,
I'm editing that
if
out.
if I can go this sentence without being interrupted, I'm gonna find this a fucking miracle. By rule, the better win is the team who is currently the way you're covering. I thought you were young, but the way it is like defined, the team who is ranked higher at the current moment is the better win. And at the current moment, who's ranked higher, Ohio State or Texas? Answer my question.
Ohio State. Holy voice crack.
So that's a by me or you?
No, by me.
But
Shut up.
anyway, let's shift topics before I end up punching a hole through the wall because I'm like,
Okay.
Evan.
Wait, can you pause for like five
Let's talk.
seconds? Wait, can we pause? Let's pause for like five
Let's,
seconds because I need to make sure this thing is still on. Yes, it is. Okay.
okay.
Wait. Continue.
Let's talk about the game that happened in Knoxville. We had a field stormer in Knoxville. For all those people out here who are listening who are Alabama fans, Dixieland Delight is about the state of Alabama. Sorry, it's about the state of Tennessee.
Okay.
Stop singing Dixieland Delight.
This
It's
game
your
was
own song.
amazing. This game was amazing. It truly was.
I was watching it.
Yeah, he was at the Taylor Swift concert, but I watched like
I was watching the game. I was sitting
You didn't
in
see the full.
Concord
You
during
didn't
the
see the
opening
full
act.
thing. You didn't see the full thing. Okay, you can. Okay,
I was watching on my phone in the merch line.
okay, whatever. But this game was incredible. I have a lot of concerns for both teams though. Alabama, enough said. They're 15 in the country.
Everything?
Yes, I think
Everything?
I think this is the same thing. I mean, I wasn't around when this season happened, but I can talk based on stats that I think what we're seeing right now is a similar thing to what we saw in Nick Saban's first season of new coach, new opportunities. You're gonna struggle with a new coach in year one, and that's what this team's done. I mean, they've struggled. They have a new coach. I think in years to come, Alabama will be a lot better.
Yeah, so a few things on that. You know who did struggle with a new coach?
Ohio State.
Ohio State was a Ohio State was a terrible fumble call away from going to the national championship that year, but we're not complaining. I understand what you're saying about Nick Saban's first year. That Nick Saban's first year, he lost at home to UL Monroe and finished 6-7.
Damn.
And you look at the Board's first year, right? I mean, the loss to Tennessee. You lost to Bandy. I don't think
Which
Bandy
might
is
be the
equally as
worst loss
bad.
in the country.
No,
What's
Vanderbilt's
what?
5-2. Vanderbilt's 5-2.
Okay, they're not that good. Okay, what's the worst loss in the country?
Vanderbilt literally lost to Georgia State.
Who is? And let's continue with our conversation. Okay, let's stop getting off track.
But yeah, I think this Alabama team is better than that first year Saban national first Saban team.
Yeah, like I was. Let me talk about my struggles. Not my struggles, but my problems with Tennessee. I think this was their third game, maybe their second game in a row, not scoring in the first half. And
Third, that's
yeah,
I thought.
third. They didn't score in the first half, and I know they looked great in the second half. They looked amazing in the second half, but again, you can't go scoreless in an entire half, especially in
Yeah,
a big game.
that's sort of what we're talking about with Texas, right? Like scoring, like not scoring in the first half against a lesser opponent. Yeah, sure, you can get over it. But not scoring in the first half against Georgia, it's going to cost you. Luckily, it didn't cost Tennessee today,
Right.
or the other day. But it did cost them against Arkansas. And if they don't play Georgia this regular season, if they were to play Georgia in Atlanta, that's going to cost you against Georgia.
I thought they did play Georgia in the regular season.
I think Georgia plays Ole Miss, not Tennessee.
Let me check. I'll check real quick.
You check, but I don't think so. And if I'm right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, I'm gonna, like you said, you can't, when you're playing in a big game like the national championship or in the playoffs in general,
Yeah.
you can't go.
Yes,
Yes,
you
they
can
do. They do
consider
play
it.
Georgia.
They do. So yeah, okay. Like, yeah, starting slow against Florida worked out for them because Florida isn't as good as Alabama, so they were able to sort of keep themselves in the game by playing good defense. But when you're playing Georgia, or if you're playing Ohio State, or if you're playing Texas, or if you're playing one of those premier teams in the playoff or whatever, and you are down 14-3 at halftime because you can't get your offense going, you're not going to win the game, right?
Right.
You're because luckily Alabama also couldn't get their offense going. They got set up by that Sanders fumble in the first half.
Right.
So I think, um, you know, I think if Tennessee can figure out a way to get their offense going in the first half, that's a really good football team.
I'm not.
But that's a pretty big fix.
Yes. Like, especially just.
Like you can't fix that overnight, but there are things that you can do to get Nico and Maliava into a rhythm. And then maybe instead of being down 14-3 at halftime, you're up 14-3 at halftime. And then in the second half, you can explode and win 31-6 against a lesser team.
Yeah, and like, I mean, they play Kentucky next. They have a bye week this week. They play Kentucky next, who seems to be just the bearer of either pulling off a huge upset or almost pulling off a huge upset.
I mean, they held Georgia to 13 points for the entire game.
Yeah, and
So
beat Ole Miss.
it's not like if you had told me, hey, Tennessee's having offensive struggles in the first half, they lost to Arkansas, but they beat Alabama and Florida, and you said, hey, they have a bye for Kentucky, I would have said, okay, they probably fixed it against Kentucky. That's not going to happen because Kentucky has been playing potent defense, and they've so far shut down Georgia. They've so far shut down Ole Miss, who have two
Yes.
great offenses led by good quarterbacks. So, um, and you said that they play Georgia in a
Yeah.
few weeks here. Georgia's not going to let you score on them in the first half. You do play Mississippi State before Georgia, so you should be able to move the ball well in the first half because Mississippi State's terrible. Then you play Georgia. Then you play UTEP. So you have, and then it's Vandy at Vandy. So you have a chance. Yeah, three of your final five games are tough with Kentucky, who's better than their record shows.
Yes.
Then Georgia, then Vandy. But you also have two chances to sort of patch up those holes that you have on your team. And, I hate to say this about Vandy because they're kind of America's team right now, but don't you sort of feel Vandy like fall off coming? Like, yeah, you beat
Yeah.
Alabama. That's the best win in program history. And you go out there. Last week they only beat Ball State by 10 the other day.
Yeah, I think like you said, they're America's team right now. But
Yeah,
I do
everybody's
think
rooting for them.
but I do think that like they're I'm gonna use the O word, I'm gonna use overrated.
Yeah,
They have an
like
amazing win. Like you said, best win in program history. But it's still Vanderbilt and like you said, they only beat Ball State by 10.
you
Why?
lost the Georgia State.
Yeah, like think about if that happened in a different order. Wait, when did
Mm,
they lose to Georgia State?
that was pretty early, like week two.
Like imagine if they beat Alabama and are top 25, then you lose to Georgia State. They wouldn't be top 25. If their schedule happened in a different order, they're not top 25 right now.
No, and Tennessee and Vanderbilt, it's like not a rivalry you think of. Vanderbilt hasn't won that game in years. So I think they're going to be determined with the best team they've had in years to go out and win. But I can also see a scenario where Tennessee walks in that place, their fans absolutely take over Nashville, and Tennessee blows them out just because they want to shut up their rivals, which it's understandable. You know,
Everyone wants to do
it's
that.
yeah, like so yeah. I can see this going both ways. Tennessee pulls a Tennessee, and they lose to Vanderbilt, which is the most Josh Heupel Tennessee thing of all time. Or Tennessee goes out there,
And
you
proves that
know,
they're a contender.
beats Kentucky by a sizable margin, say 17, right?
Yeah.
They prove themselves against Tennessee. They crush or against Kentucky. They crush Mississippi State. Let's say they lose a close game by 3 at Georgia. Like,
That's a game I want to touch on a little bit once you're done.
yeah, losing at 3 to Georgia. It's not. It's a
It's not a
loss,
bad
but
loss.
it's not a terrible loss. And then you go out there and you beat UTEP by 1,000. And then if you're able to go out there and crush Vanderbilt, you may not make the SEC championship game, but you're going to be the sixth seed, the seventh seed.
Yeah, just to talk about the Tennessee at Georgia game for a minute. Like, I think if Georgia wins this, if they're not
Mm-hmm.
already, then they will be at number one. And once again, Georgia proves that they're Georgia and are the favorite to win the championship. But let's say if Tennessee wins, if Tennessee wins against Georgia, then you could make a solid case for Tennessee winning the national championship.
Yeah, because you beat Alabama and you went on the road and you beat Georgia. It's just the one thing holding me back is the Arkansas game. Same thing I
Yeah.
sort of said about Texas, same thing I said about Ole Miss, right? They beat up, their offense beat up on rather soft competition and soft defenses. And they played a solid team on the road, and they went out there and they sort of their offense slowed down a little bit. But if you beat Georgia on the road and you went out the rest of your games, and they
Then
go, I would pick them to win the SEC if that was to happen.
yeah, and I have a comment and I have a question for you, Miles.
Yeah,
I there's there's also a scenario where it's like, what if by the Georgia game, Tennessee still can't figure out their first half offense? Then that turns into like, if Tennessee still wins the Georgia game, even having not figured out their offense, that wasn't Tennessee playing well. That was Georgia not playing well. And
yeah,
yeah, like, I mean, I honestly am not seeing a world where Tennessee can't figure out their offense and still beats Georgia. And
yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
and then you get to, what if Tennessee can't figure out their offense by the college football playoffs? Then you have an argument that they could be a first or second round exit. But I think if Tennessee doesn't win the SEC, which they likely won't, and then they get that first round, they they're probably going to be at home in that first round. I don't see anyone going into Tennessee and winning at Tennessee, especially with what I heard from that Tennessee crowd this past week against Alabama
No, you get a bunch of Tennessee football fans drinking for a playoff game at night. Oh, Jesus.
at that
Oh
stadium.
boy. Oh
You're
boy.
not winning. You're not winning.
Oh boy. But like, if they beat Georgia and they can't beat their offense going, because I disagree with you on Georgia lost that game. Tennessee figured something out. Tennessee
Yeah.
must have figured something out
Yeah,
if they're going on the road
that's
to
what I
beat
said.
Georgia.
That's what I said. Like, I don't think I see a world where Tennessee can't figure their stuff
Yeah.
out and they still win at Georgia.
No, there's no world unless Carson Beck has one of those games or maybe Tennessee only gets 3 points in the first half, but Beck throws two interceptions and scores 6-3 Georgia at halftime. And then Tennessee gets the offense going and wins the game 21-17 because Georgia allowed Tennessee to stay in the game.
Yeah, I really liked what Tennessee did this past weekend on defense. They clearly
Yeah,
couldn't figure out their offense, so instead of struggling to figure that out when the game was happening, they left that till halftime. But in the meantime, they kept Alabama to just 7 points in the first half.
yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying. Okay, you can't get your offense going. Rely on your defense for 2 quarters to sort of keep you in it, and then the offense at some point will come, and you will end up winning the game with 24 points, right? So
Yes.
it was a tale of two halves against Bama, and it's gonna be it. You can't play a bad first half against Georgia and expect to win.
Right.
We saw that with Texas. They dug themselves a hole, and they couldn't get out of that. They almost did for a few minutes, but they couldn't dig themselves out of that hole. So you need to come out there, and if you can go up 2 scores against Georgia, you're setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, right. Like my question for you was, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm still gonna ask it. Is there a world where any conference, but is there a world where a three-loss team can still get to the playoffs?
Georgia plays Ole Miss, right?
Yes. So you're saying like if Georgia loses to Ole Miss and Tennessee, do they still make the playoffs?
No, because they wouldn't have that. I mean, you wouldn't have the Texas game. Like, I think if Texas goes out and wins the SEC and Georgia loses to Tennessee and Ole Miss, if you have a win over the SEC champions by 2 scores on the road, they may sneak them in there just because that's such a good resume boosting win.
Yes.
But that's really the only way I can see it. Like Ohio State, if we lose to Penn State and Indiana, we're out, or something
Yeah.
like that.
You have to
Like
be a
I
really good team, and you have to already have a really good resume to be a three-loss team and still make it.
and I think Georgia's built up that resume up to this point with the wins they have over Clemson and Texas.
Right.
It may not have been pretty in all of their games,
But they got it
but they
done.
have the wins. They have the wins.
Yes. And like now that I'm thinking about like we're getting pretty close to the playoffs, and I'm just
Yeah,
thinking about it like it's hard to think of like right now it's really difficult to say like one of Ohio State and Oregon, probably one of those two is going to win the conference. One of them is going to lose the conference. One of Georgia or Texas or Tennessee, two of those teams are going to lose the conference. Like you see all these SEC and Big Ten teams, and you say they're amazing,
yeah,
but the problem with the SEC is that there's so many good teams that everyone beats up on each other, and only one team can make it. I mean, only one team can make it with the first round bye, and like we've seen that. Like if I take a look at let's take a look at Alabama's schedule real quick. Like remaining schedule for the season, they're tough. Like they have some tough games. They have Missouri. They play at LSU. They have the Iron Bowl game, and they play at Oklahoma. Like those are hard games to win. So
yeah,
like I think if like it goes back to my main point, everyone beats up on each other in the SEC, and then all of a sudden like Texas A&M sneaks into the playoffs.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's all I have. I'm
Okay.
actually gonna move us through here because time has been an issue
Yes, it
today.
has.
I'm going to move us to some breaking news that we had a couple hours ago on Atlanta Hawks' young star, Jalen
Jalen Johnson.
Johnson, new contract, 5 years, $150 million. If you're calling this an overpay, you're a capital.
Yeah, I mean, you can. We'll talk about this in the next segment a little bit, but we had a lot of guys get overpaid today. Jalen Johnson was not one of those guys, and like you look at Jalen's stats and you say like 13 or 14 points, 7
He had
rebounds or so.
17, I think 17 last year, points per game.
Yeah, and you look at that and you say, how is that worth $150 million? But what you don't see is how Jalen actually impacts the team. If the Hawks didn't have Jalen, I guarantee we'd be dead last in defense. Jalen Johnson's one of the most impactful
Yeah.
defenders that I've ever seen. He deserves the money that he got. I This was a great move by the Hawks. Period.
Yes. I think he complements Trae Young's game better than DeJounte Murray ever did. And I
Yes.
think I can see him helping in the development of Zachary Sachet. Um, and man, he's worth it. He's worth it. The injuries are a little concerning to me, but that's the only thing that even remotely concerns me about Zachary Sachet.
Yeah. Like I think with what you said about the development of how Jalen can help with Zachary Ressachey's development, if Risa Shea can become Jalen on defense and like a prime DeAndre Hunter on offense, that's a great player right there. Like a prime
Yes,
DeAndre
and
Hunter was like
he's
20 points
tall.
a
He's six
game.
foot ten. Like
That's
we talked
great.
about John Collins being the best lob threat for Trae Young. Add 3 more inches to that, and a good defender.
3 more inches? What do you mean?
What do you think I'm talking about?
John
Add, I'm comparing him to John Collins, right? So I'm thinking
Risa
add a
Shea
couple
or
more inches.
Jalen?
Talking about Risa Shea.
Risa Shea is not 3 inches taller than John Collins.
Then what is he then?
I think they're the exact same height.
No, they're
You keep
not.
talking. Let me look at this for a second. John Collins is 6'9", and then Risa Shea, if I can spell his name right.
I just like.
And Risa Shea is also 6'9". They are
Oh
the
my god.
same height.
Okay, so I just think because Zachary
Still a
is
lob threat.
skinnier. No offense to John Collins,
Risa Shea
but
would be a
just because Rizzo is skinnier, I thought he was a little taller than John Collins. I was under that impression. I'm sorry, John. Sorry, but like, we slimmed down a little bit, and people won't think that about you. But anyway, ignoring my ignorant comment about their height, I apologize about that. I think he's better than John Collins because he's the lob threat and he's a good defender. He's a better defender than John Collins was.
and he
So
has
he
all
has
the
better defensive potential.
potential to be a way better offensive player than John Collins ever was.
Yeah.
I think what Risa Shea doesn't have that John Collins does is just John Collins was the cheerleader of the Atlanta Hawks. He was the guy that pumped everyone up all the time. He got everyone ready for the game. That's kind of what Larry Nance Jr. is for us right now, but no one will ever
Yeah.
be John Collins in that role.
No, yeah. No offense to John, but I think we traded him a little too late, actually.
Yeah.
But listen, I think Dale's going to help with the potential of Zachary a little bit, and
Yes.
he just brings so much to the Hawks. And I think he helps take the weight off of Trae Young's shoulders more than Dejounte Murray did. So
Yeah.
that's going to shift me into asking you a few questions about this upcoming NBA season.
Bring it.
Who's the most underrated team going into the season?
Underrated. Okay, so
There's Clay. Nobody's talking about them, and it should be.
I don't know about this one, like this team, because recently everybody's been talking about him, but like I don't
Just say it.
the Memphis Grizzlies. Everyone's been talking about him recently, but
Yeah.
nobody's been rating them high. Also, no, I was about to say the
No, you.
Milwaukee Bucks. They have the worst coaching staff in the NBA. They're not
Yeah,
underrated at
I
all.
agree on Memphis. Yeah, they were terrible last year because they half their roster got injured. I think they picked up the descendants of Elvis Presley off of the streets of Memphis. Like
They, also, a player that I want to talk
can't
about for a
can't win
sec
this.
is G.G. Jackson. Like
Yes.
a very underrated player on a very underrated team. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It,
My underrated team. Why are we not talking about the Orlando Magic people? Why
that's a
are
good
we
one.
not talking about the Orlando Magic? They go in here last year. They were a bottom feeder in the East the year before. They go out there and they lose in seven in the first round. Yeah, they lost in the first round in seven to a good Cleveland team on the road after being a bottom feeder in the NBA for multiple
Yeah,
years.
and that only at
This
that.
team,
Go ahead.
this team can go a long way, and I think people are underestimating them.
I think the reason why a bunch of Eastern Conference teams are underrated is because I think it's the general consensus that the Celtics are going to win the East this year. It's really hard to talk about any
Yeah,
other East team when we basically know that the Celtics are going to win.
yeah,
Meanwhile, the West is wide open for like six teams.
yeah. It's just that, I'm not saying the Magic are going to go out here and win the East,
Right.
but I wouldn't be surprised if the Eastern Conference Finals was Orlando and Boston.
Yes. I wouldn't be surprised either. I mean, I could see them being a top three seed this year, along with Boston and whatever other team, but I mean, I think, yeah, this Magic team could be something special this year.
Yes, and we talked about underrated teams. Talk about overrated
Only
teams.
natural.
Um, I'm gonna give you
I already have
my
mine.
consensus overrated the Milwaukee Bucks.
Whoa.
You just
Okay.
talked about you just talked about their coaching staff. I think the team they have is a good team, but you have Darvin Ham and Doc Rivers with the same coaching staff. Really? And
Yeah, that is bound for disaster.
you think you can win anything past the first round with that coaching staff? And Giannis is only getting older. Dame is only getting older. I'm not saying they're
And Giannis is
bad,
only getting more
but
impatient.
but I can absolutely see a regression this year from the Milwaukee Bucks.
Milwaukee Bucks are weird. You could easily see them go
Yes.
way up or you can go way down.
Yeah.
Because
I can see them surprising everybody and somehow taking the one seed from Boston. But I can also see them
being a play-in team.
being the sixth seed.
I think
It's
play-in team
fully
is too far.
dependent on how Doc Rivers can do this season. If
Over
he can,
over
if
under
he can,
40.5 games before someone from the Bucks coaching staff is fired.
oh, I'm taking the under on that.
Yeah, same with me.
How many games was Adrian Griffin fired the last year?
Like 30 something, 40 something.
It wasn't 40. It wasn't 40.
Adrian Griffin was a solid coach. I mean, at least for
I
that
just
team.
I get the locker room with him, great, but your thought as a front office was, hey, let's fire Adrian Griffin, let's hire Doc Rivers.
I think the only reason I mean, I could be so wrong about this. I think the only reason that Doc Rivers seemed appealing to them was that he was a big name. Big
Yeah,
name
and
means
then
bigger branding and bigger, and like the general consensus is that Doc Rivers is a solid coach, but he's not. He's just a big name.
yeah, and hey, let's go out here this offseason and hire Darvin Ham while we're at it and make this fucking staff worse.
Yeah, that was a very questionable move. I also think I have two overrated teams.
Mm-hmm.
The Lakers.
Thank you. I wanted to say the Lakers, but I'm worried.
The
Go
Lakers
ahead.
are in the same situation, or they have the same thing as the Warriors every year. they have this really huge star in LeBron or Steph Curry, and people think they can just turn it around and win the West. They're not doing that. They're both Warriors are probably gonna be out of the play-in this year, despite Steph's
And
incredible
the
play.
and the Lakers are a playing team at
Maybe
best.
just out of the play-in at best.
May, they're not getting past the
I
17.
mean, LeBron is gonna be in a retirement home soon. Bronny James is his grandson.
And Bronny James is the most overrated draft prospect since
And
ever. So
JJ Redick, he's not gonna be a good coach.
he was he was coaching his son's basketball team this time last year.
I don't know. Okay, so we see this a lot in the NBA now. These guys are great players, but they wouldn't make great coaches or general managers. They like even the Hawks right now. They have Kyle Korver as their assistant general manager. He's
Yeah,
not. I love Kyle Korver as a player. He's not a great assistant GM.
yeah, I agree. I agree, and yeah, it's like that was a LeBron hire. If you want to
Yes.
prove to me that LeBron James does not have a say in the decision making of that team, like Aaron Rodgers with the Jets, but like if you're gonna sit here and say LeBron doesn't have a say in that team's decision making, then you're lying to me because
Yes.
I know their front office would go, hey, with every coach on the market right now, let's go hire a guy who's never coached past the Pee Wee level basketball.
I know. And my other overrated team that I wanted to say is the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Okay.
I know
Ben won't like that. Ben won't like
Ben will
that,
hate
but
that so much, but I think that the reason why I have them as overrated, this might it might have been the consensus before the trade with New York, but like losing Carl Anthony Towns, I know that he doesn't bring a whole bunch on defense, but he's a presence there, and more than Julius Randle will ever be. And I know they got Dante DiVincenzo too, but you also lost so much shooting with that trade.
like you got Cat, right? He's your big man. He's your franchise icon.
Oh,
He's
you
been
have
a
Anthony
he
Edwards.
well like he's the guy that I always when somebody said the Minnesota Timberwolves, I always thought Colin Anthony Cat
Right.
because he was there for so long. He was there when they were terrible, and he was there when they made the postseason. He was there when they were in the conference finals. He was there for all. He was there with Kevin freaking Love when he was there. Like he was there with
Miles,
everything. And
can this way?
then he's now with the Knicks. And yes, you get the shooting of Dante DiVincenzo. You get the creepy ass eyes of Julius Randle, but
Julius
that's all you
Randle.
get. Um,
Were there? I forgot. Were there any picks involved? I assume there were.
I think it's all you still remember.
I think, but both teams are gonna be. They're both teams are gonna be great, but Minnesota
Yeah.
is not winning the West like people are saying.
No, I think that's gonna go to Denver.
Ooh. Mm. No, I don't think
Denver.
after they lost KCP, who in the
Well,
West?
Jokic is my MVP pick.
It could easily be Dallas. It could easily be Denver. It could still be
Yeah, but
Minnesota. I'm
like,
not ruling them out completely.
yeah, no, of course. But I just don't see it. I just don't see them beating both Denver and Dallas in a 7 game series.
Wait, there's one team that I'm. Oh, the Thunder. They're gonna win the
The Thunder,
West.
yeah. OKC, Thunder, Mavs, Nuggets. I just can't see Minnesota beating all three of them in a 7 game series.
I mean, in what world are they facing all three of them? I don't know, but
But like,
still,
I have a hard time believing that they can beat the Thunder in this 7 game
I have
series.
a hard time
I have a
believing that
hard
anyone
time.
can beat the Thunder. I think
Yeah,
this year the
like
Thunder.
I do think Boston is the only team that I'm confidently saying can beat the Thunder. Boston is the only team that I would say, yeah, I think they're going to win this series, and I would feel confident about my pick.
I think you might laugh at me for saying this for this question, but could OKC be like a team that has like one of those great teams that has like 67 or 68 wins this year? Are they
I'm not
that
gonna laugh
good
at you for
or
that.
are they not? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, do I think it's gonna happen?
probably not.
No.
It
Do
could.
do I think they have the chance to do it? Absolutely. I think for that to happen, Shea's got to play like the best player in basketball,
He's the most
which
consistent
I
player
think
in the league.
is he's fully capable of playing like the best player in basketball. But and then he's finally got. I get Cat looks like Abraham Lincoln. He's tall, but he's not the stocky guy you want to be your center. So you go out there and get Isaiah Hartenstein, who's your like quintessential big guy, gonna bully you down low. Can I wrap it up soon? Yeah. Okay. I need to hurry this up. My roommate is rushing me. But yeah, they finally got their big man. So if that all connects, then I think they definitely do that. But I just don't think it's gonna happen. So moving on here. Quick little thought on last night's Steelers game. I think Russell Wilson played well. I apologize for complaining about you, Russ. He won 37-15. NFL posted your official check. That was awful last night. But we're 5-2. Here we go, Steelers. Let's not lose to the Giants on Monday night, shall we? Now I want your quick pick. Who's winning the World Series?
Dodgers in 6.
I got
Dodgers
Yankees in
in 6.
6.
Aaron Judge is
Yeah,
he's that guy, but he's not that guy in the playoffs.
yeah, Yankees in 6. Juan Soto wins World Series MVP.
Really?
One last thing. College basketball. Too early for our picks for coming back to the championship. But I want your pick who wins Coach of the Year.
Coach of the year. Oh, okay. Oh, this is difficult. I think it could easily be Dan Hurley again. I mean, think about this. Uh, you could say this UConn team is underrated. If he
Yeah.
leads them to like another one seed national championship type team, then I could easily see it being him.
You know who I think it's going to be?
Too.
This is going to be a hot take. Mark Pope, Kentucky. I think he's going to build this program up. And I think, I'm not saying they're going to go out there and win the Natty. I'm not going out there, they're not going to go out there and win the SEC. But I think he can bring this team to a really high seed and take them far in the tournament. He can win Coach of the Year. Because Coach Cal leaves, they're like, oh, Kentucky's going to be down this year. Nobody's talking about Kentucky as a national championship contender. What if he goes out there and makes them a national championship contender in year one?
Like Elite Eight or something. Something like that. That's a successful year.
Like,
That's a coach of the year type experience.
lose to Tennessee in the SEC championship game by 4 points, and then go out there and lose in the Elite Eight. I can absolutely see Mark Pope winning Coach of the Year, and I think since Kentucky's going under the radar, I can totally see them making the run.
And I got one question for you before we wrap up here.
You said Dan Hurley, right?
Yes. Oh, he's writing this down. Oh no. Okay, I got one question for you before we wrap up.
Yeah.
We talked about who we think our 1 seeds in the tournament are last time.
Okay.
But who are your 2 seeds?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
You want me to go first? What do you think?
Yes, I would like you to go.
Okay. I think if I'm remembering right, I had Kansas, UConn, Duke, and Baylor. I think those were my 4. Naturally,
Yes.
as my 2 seed, I'm gonna have Alabama as a 2 seed.
Uh,
Like they're obviously the second best team in the country. How can I not?
yeah.
And if I can search up rankings real quick, I can see like other low key teams that could
Hey,
make it.
I have mine if you want me to go.
Please.
Um, this one's gonna surprise you. I really like what they're doing with this program. Give me Texas. I think Texas is gonna be really good this year, and
Yeah.
I think they will be the worst of the two seeds, but I think they will be a two seed.
Right.
Um, John Shire and Duke. Um, I think Tennessee's gonna win the SEC, but they're gonna have a couple losses, so they'll be the best of the two seeds. And then Carolina.
Yeah, and a team that I wanted to bring up was Rutgers. I think
Ooh, yeah, I talked about them. Yeah.
they could be a two seed, especially with how we talked about them last time and their high usage freshmen. I'm buying into their freshmen this year. I think they could do it. Another one here that could be a hot take: the Arkansas Razorbacks.
I love what Eric Musselman does there every year.
Yeah, they could be a two seed, and then my final two seed's actually gonna be a Big 12 team, the Houston Cougars. They're
Okay.
amazing. They almost won. They won the Big 12 regular season title, I think. They didn't win the tournament. They lost to Iowa State, who's another great team. I think this year Houston's better. Houston's amazing. They could be a two seed.
Yes. All right.
And
So there you
that's
go.
all we have. Episode
Uh,
2 of Sports Circuit.
we will have more for you next time.
We will have a lot more. We'll
We'll
have
have a
more
lot more for
arguments.
y'all.
And we'll turn this into a
Dude, first take. First
yeah.
take junior. White Stephen A.
Yes.
um, and how about next episode? Do you want to dedicate our entire next episode to a college basketball preview?
Let's do it.
Okay, our next episode
I
is going
mean,
to be our
okay.
college basketball season
Wait.
preview.
We have to dedicate some of it to the past weekend of college football. We have to do that every episode.
Yes, and then we'll talk about the Hawks for a little bit, but then the rest of the episode will be
Like at least
discussing,
a half hour, 40 minutes to college
yeah,
basketball.
to our player of the year picks, national championship picks, and everything like that. Because the season, it stays October 21st. The season begins in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. November 4th is when the first games are. Today's 21st. So assuming we don't film until like the 28th, we're going to be like 6 days from the season. So I think this is a good time to do it. So we'll give our next episode, we'll reaffirm our 1 and 2 seeds. We'll talk about our coaches of the year for a minute, and then we'll go player of the year, national championship, and Final Four, and we'll just talk.
We'll talk about some different teams. We'll talk about teams that could make a surprise run, teams that could have an early exit.
And
It's going to be
much
crazy.
more.
All right, well, that's going to conclude our episode for today. We will see you sometime next week.
Yes. All right.
All right, bye, everyone.